Okay, hi everyone. It's Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. This is the SIG Architecture Enhancements subproject meeting. We abide by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, so be good to everybody. And I guess we'll get started. I'm Kirsten, and with me is Ray. And do I need to share my screen? I mean, there's only two of us. We're both looking at the same thing. So Ray actually added a GitHub issue. I'll put it in the chat, even though he has it for posterity. Let's see. It's called Kept Stages and Transitions. So I guess I'm just wondering what you wanted to discuss, Ray. I feel like I'm on a radio show right now.
So this is just to highlight an issue that was brought up during the 123 release cycle. It's more of a proposition, I guess, if we need a two-phase commit in the kept.yaml. Do we need to distinguish a target and an actual release, I guess, release version date of the kep? I guess the background is this, like, what if a kep they do opt in for a release, but let's say they don't make code freeze or they don't make that release. And some folks believe that they should not revert a change on a kep, that said that there should be other fields, another fields or other fields involved that will state a target versus an actual. So this is just one that was just brought up during the 123 release. Just want to bring it up on this subproject call.
Yeah, I guess reading it, the thing that concerns me is that it makes, I'm a little bit worried about the idea that people might have to go back and, I don't know, like maybe I should share my screen so that we can kind of see. 1 second. Yeah, because I think that the proposal was having a two-stage commit where it was like target and actual, and that seems like it would require people to do another PR into the kep, which feels like it would be even harder to track, right? Like, because right now, what is it? We end up having essentially like the release that we're targeting, and then if that is incorrect, like the release team has people go back and say, okay, that was wrong, like we have to update it, or the next time that you're actually trying to do it, you have to fix it. But this would mean that for everybody, they would probably have to do a second PR to their enhancement. Is that what that's kind of what it feels like? There's more, we're adding more touches, but more touches feel like more opportunities to have things stale or wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that whenever we add additional fields, it does add a bit of granularity, and it truly might be more accurate, but it will add another touch to upgrade or to update what is the actual, if it did meet the targets. Yeah. And that might be another step after the release or after a certain milestone is met.
I mean, it feels like, I think that we always say, like, in the release, like, it's not done until it's done, right? Like, it's not done until everything's merged at the end and we are sure that, a certain kep was, and its, associated work was included in the release. So there's always that element, but I feel like the release team is also tracking, like, who's getting booted out, and it feels a little bit more doable I know that when I was on the release team, we went back and, we had to, like, make sure that, keps were kicked out of the release or, booted out. They weren't tracked anymore. So maybe that's something, ensure that the kep is, updated, which, I don't know, that seems kind of difficult, if we're honest with ourselves, like, to force people to go back and make another PR, even just to take away I'm wondering, one thing that we could do, and this is a little bit weird, is that because we can't always get people to do the PR on the kep to update it, like if it's dropped, I think most people do it though. But if they don't, we could always just have, like, potentially a label that it indicates that it was dropped from a release, like in the issue, you know, because like each KEP has an issue that tracks it. So these are all going to be KEPs that are still open, right? And so it seems like reasonable that we could also add like some sort of label that just also says like, you know, whatever, because we have tracked no, but we don't have like a dropped, like dropped from release, whatever. We could always have like a dropped label potentially just to let people know that it was dropped from a certain release. I don't know, like, what do you think? I think it's just difficult to get people to, I mean, the initial proposal, I think it's really difficult to get people to do like everybody to do multiple PRs to a KEP. Like, I don't think that that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. I don't know if adding another label was
Yeah.
actually the right choice. I think the track no is enough because the labels, they're dynamic anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this like from the perspective of the release team, like a big issue? I mean, it feels like, you know, the release team is tracking the things that get dropped, and it's easy enough to write a note on, which I'm pretty sure they already do. They write a note on the issue that says this was dropped. This was dropped from the release, right?
Yeah, they do.
And then
so it's already tracked that way.
Right. And then we have the final sort of release messaging that says these are the KEPs that are in the release. And so those KEPs won't be included. So, I mean, do we really need more than that? You know, like if it's not in our official, like these are the KEPs that were in the release list, if the release team has gone to the open issue because the KEP's still open and said, hey, it's been dropped from this release, I mean, there doesn't really seem to be that much more to do.
Yeah, I agree. We could also add this to the survey.
Yeah. But I know that there was also like a web page that somebody was working on for KEPs. So there's also the thing of like, sometimes I think right now maybe the list of KEPs in a release is a little harder to access. But I think that, you know, if the KEP website goes live, then it's also kind of reinforces what's actually in the release, like in a pretty visual, clickable way, as opposed to just like a repo that you're bumbling around. So I'd probably wait to see like if that clears up any confusion as well. But I think as long as especially the release team is unambiguously saying things on an issue and it's, you know, properly labeled, feels like that's the lowest sort of touch thing that we can do that's reasonably accurate, in my opinion. I don't know. We can add that to the survey though.
Yeah, we could add something about even, well, actually a more general question, like what changes or would folks like to be in the KEP YAML?
Yeah, I mean, I just haven't really seen this be like a big issue in the releases, and I feel like, you know, KEPs are reasonably up to date. So yeah. We'll see. I know we could, yeah, I'll think about it. Do you want to go to the survey actually? I was just doing some brainstorming, so I'll share my screen. Hold on. I was just kind of trying to get ideas mostly. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Right? Okay, cool. I can't see you now. Yeah, so I can give you access to this as well. But I was just thinking of like general ideas. Like I know that there are certain ways to like formulate actual questions. So what I wanted to do is just like get some areas that we thought generally we were interested in, getting some information, and then like talking to, I know that there are some people who are really good at making surveys to get it formed into like a proper survey. So I have instructions because I know like, at least for me, even just personally, I find it really hard to read the instructions of the KEP. Like they don't exist anywhere outside of the markdown. And I think that can be really confusing for people. Like people have said that to me as well. Like, oh, like, is there a separate doc with the instructions? Or, you know, like it's actually kind of hard to view them without being in like a super markdown view. And then I'm just wondering about like the quality of the instructions, like do any of them make like sense or not? Subject matter, I know that we're always talking about, we want people to memorialize their decision-making process. But like the CAP is best suited for like a very technical kind of subject, but there are process CAPs potentially and other types of CAPs that maybe we haven't thought about that, people want to write a CAP for, but maybe the current template is really heavy or doesn't have things that they think are relevant, so like kind of getting that kind of information. I did have a thing in a section for the cap.yaml. Like, I don't know how people are interacting with that. I feel like, and I'm kind of interested, especially the statuses, like, because we have provisional, implementable, implemented, but then we also have these other optional things like deferred, rejected, withdrawn, replaced. And I'm wondering, like, how often do people actually use like all of the statuses and like, do they find them useful at all? Just to see. I had a user story because someone was actually asking for user story guidance previously. And now I'm just wondering, like, do other people have the same issue? Because we can always get, more guidance for this. And I think what I wrote is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not gonna go too deep, but also wanted to flag just specific questions like to SIG leads, since they see like a lot of different authors. Like if there's something that people are always getting caught up on, if something's missing, if there's something that they want to require, or if there are things that they as like leads think, isn't necessarily that useful. Because I think they have like a slightly different perspective than authors. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, they see a lot of CAPs and they deal with a lot of authors and they're using it like in a really utilitarian way. So I feel like they have like a sort of great perspective on like the actual template itself. And I thought general usage would be interesting, because the one thing I thought was like, do people really read CAPs like after the CAP is done? Or are we all just like, trying to get it like to the final state? But then we never like how often are people using the CAP? Like is it easy to find the CAP that they want, etc. And then just like general technical issues, like, have you ever encountered like a technical issue that prevented you from submitting your CAP, whatever? Those are just like the kind of subsections that were off the top of my head. Some of them are probably unnecessary and probably need other things, but that was kind of what I was going for in my first pass. So, hey, wait, I can't see you. I'm gonna stop sharing now. Oh, there you are. Oh, there's Ray. Sorry. So, yeah, like, are there any things that because I know you've worked on the release team, so you've seen a lot of enhancements. Is there anything that you think we should add, whether it's like a specific question or like a general area, about like the sort of CAP template with an eye of like, how do we improve this? Like, how do we improve the usage or remove the friction or something?
Yeah, I think we should just have at the end of the survey, just have a general comment box, because what if someone has a topic or a point that is not covered in these questions. I know we've have a few issues that people have created and that they wanted to talk about. And I think we should also see if we can add those, not specifically like those issues that we have regarding CAPs to the survey in some way or the other, but doesn't have to be like address it specifically. It's like, what do you think of issue, 1, 2, 3 or something like that. So just more of a way, since now we have a survey, you could also see if we have issues.
I'm a little afraid that if we link to issues, then we're kind of like.
Oh no, I don't want to link to issues. Yeah, I just using kind of like some of the, not all the issues, but like some of the issues that we might see that other folks might be interested or might have input on. Just having it in a general way to add some feedback from those issues to the survey. I could add in some suggestions and we could go from there. on that,
Yeah.
just because we kind of have this reach with the survey, and so we could leverage it with some more, I guess, some issues that might be I guess that might have more interest. Not saying that every issue will have an interest, but like we could highlight a few of those, or one or two of those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's kind of like, I in a way, I want to get people's like untainted opinion about the CAP. And that's the one thing that I worry about, is like people who already have an issue, like they know what the issue is. So I feel like we're aware of that. But then there's like this vast ocean of people that haven't said anything, and
That's
it's
true.
like, well, it's like, I want to know, like, because other people could find friction just in very random parts of it. Like, yeah, everything's fine, but the instructions are not clear in this section. Or, like, I don't understand like what this graduation criteria mean. And we could have like a bunch of people who like they find friction in something that, we don't find friction in, or that, louder people don't necessarily find friction in. So that was the one thing where I thought about like really taking the questions from other open issues, but then I thought, like, we know about those open issues. And so if we're asking for feedback, if other people, have that feedback, they can leave it. But I kind of almost don't want to give something that's already open and outsized importance
That's true.
in the survey. But I do think that the general comment section is really like a free form section would be really good to like let people, because sometimes people just don't want to fill out the whole survey too. They just want to say what they want to say about. So probably letting most of the questions be optional, and having like a sort of free form section would also let people like dip in and leave their like 2 cents, even if they just want to talk about like one thing. So I really think that that's like a good idea. Probably try to keep it short though, right? Because people don't like long surveys. I know that there's one or two people in the community that are really good at making surveys, so we can go to them to like get some survey information. But do you think we should have the same survey for, like, I was just thinking it's one survey, and we ask like, are you an author, are you a reader, are you a lead? And then for leads, it's like could you answer like these extra questions, or at least like not require it, but kind of target. Do you think that is there anything that you think we're overlooking just generally?
I think it's pretty much covered. Um,
Cool.
yeah, the only thing I'm worried about is it might be too long.
Yeah. I was just trying to like brain dump some stuff, because it's like, I think like some of these questions, like I just wrote out like a couple redundant questions, and they would probably be options, like or something. So yeah, I think I'll pass the links around a little bit, and we can sort of add a little bit more ideas, and then just like, because these are just ideas, and then try to distill it down to something that's a little bit more concise, and then feel pretty good about it. So I think like a page is probably, I mean, it's not going to be a Google Doc, but like shorter is better than longer.
Yeah.
And the free form box, I think you're 1,000% right, is probably essential. So that'll be cool. Okay. So I'll share that a little bit later and get some brain dump ideas. And what's the next one? GitHub issue 2. Is this the right issue that you tracked for this?
This is something I saw on the Slack channel.
I feel like they don't go the 2988.
Yeah, 2988.
I feel like this would be covered though, also partially in the survey, right? Because
I agree.
That was one of my questions, because that was the one thing that I'm not personally like sure what the ergonomics of the cap.yaml are for users. Like, I feel like a lot of us are like more involved with the actual readme.md, like the meat of the cap, so maybe like we're like, so it's like, how do authors find the cap.yaml was something that I thought that we should definitely ask about. and see like, is this useful? Is it difficult to keep updated? Are there things that, that's like, are they confusing? Like things like that, I think would be really helpful. So I think this 2988 is going to be covered by our
Yeah,
survey.
I did link the
Yeah.
wrong issue. There was a
That's why I
separate
was
issue.
confused. Okay, because I was a
Try to
little
find
confused
it.
about that.
It's the one about linting.
2983. 2983 would be
Okay.
the linting.
Gotcha.
But that's fine. We can just make another little.
And I saw that Arch,
Mhm.
I thought was hoping to be on this call.
Well, he opened a PR, but
Yeah.
I know that there's some open comments on the PR that weren't addressed. So there's that. 1 second. So there's that. So I mean that PR is not ready. The one thing that we talked about like in the past was, I mean, we're kind of limiting the changes that go into the template right now, so that's good. We used to have a lot of churn on the template, and so like rejecting people for not having the updates didn't quite make sense because like the template was always changing, and it was like, well, how do you block on not having the most recent template when the template's always changing and there's no template version, right? So it would be like how can I expect you to have the most updated version of something if there's no version? So like there's kind of a tension between Arch's PR and then the general like we don't have a version to say that you have to be at. And so that was kind of a concern of mine where we're just kind of going to say like, yeah, like you don't have, and I think his PR mostly changes the, it just checks the titles. So it's really just like, does this have the titles or not? Which I think given that the template hasn't had any churn seems more reasonable than it did last year when he opened it. So you can probably get this in some reasonable cadence, but I also do think that this might be a good time to think about versioning the KEP, like to say, maybe ask, like to say like what we have now, because it hasn't changed for quite a long time, is like version 0. Because, like we're gonna have to actually like give the KEP some sort of version at some point so that we can actually track it as we change it. And it might be a good time to think about it since the template has been pretty stable for a long time. So I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, I think versioning it after the results of the survey. If there are any changes that needs to be done after the survey or proposed after the survey, then we could version it.
Yeah.
Because I think the survey is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the first actual outreach in a long time.
Yeah. So I think we could feel, I was also concerned that like running some check on the PRs like could block authors who just want to have something that's more provisional, like in a work in progress KEP. Like that was a concern of mine. But then I guess it's like if we're really just checking for the subtopic titles, it doesn't matter that much. Like it's not that big of a burden. It's just like, yeah, put back a couple of the subtitles that you took out. I guess it doesn't matter so much. Yeah, so I guess we can try to get this in like before the next release, since this enhancement process is closed. And probably, well, I'm wondering if we think that we're going to iterate a little bit on the template, do we want to have this PR going? Like that's the thing, is like when you start to have like checks in a linter, then you have to always keep it up to date.
Yeah.
So like if we actually let it run now and we think we're going to change the template later, a bunch of things are going to be merged that would have to eventually change again. So I don't know what the utility of that is going to be. But then it could also
I agree.
Yeah. So what we could do is we could get the PR kind of like up to snuff and then just kind of hold it until we get our results back and decide what we're going to do.
Yeah.
but as a general matter, like the linter is like a good idea, and we want to get that in before the next release, along with whatever changes we wanted in the KEP. So yeah, but then we'll have to figure out. Well, see, this is the other problem now that I'm talking out loud. The problem is like, if you change the KEP and you change the, like, let's say there's a survey and the survey makes some changes to the KEP template. Can we really, without a lot of notice, start requiring people to make non-trivial changes to their KEP, like potentially like right before the release? Like, I don't really think so. So like like that was the problem that I had with the linter, because we don't have versions on the KEP. Because if we had versions, we could say, you know, you can be within one version of the current version. So you don't necessarily for this release have to be on the newest version. You should at least be on the previous version, something like that. Like we could have like a sort of refinement for that, so that new KEPs always use the newest version, but older KEPs have a little bit of room to update themselves, you know, with the changes. But when we don't have the version, then the PR is just going to force like a lot of authors to have to make a lot of updates to their KEP, which could, especially not with a lot of lead time, be a little burdensome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree on that as well. Was it before that if an enhancement wanted to opt in for release, that they had to be on the latest version, right?
I mean, it's like eyeballed for the most part. Like there were a couple like major version shifts where like the version was clearly different. Like you were using a completely different format. So for like a release team member or someone else, it was really easy to be like, you're on a version from like 2 years ago, you know? But now it's like the form of the KEP is pretty stable. So the changes that are made are a little less like obvious to the eye, where you would need a linter, but they're also like not as egregious as like, you know, a change from like, you know, a completely different version to what we have now. So there's like a little, yeah, there's a little difficulty in that. Like it sounds good, but then it could cause people a lot of problems because you don't have the notification lead time for it. And then they find out in that like 2-week cycle with their enhancement freeze that, oh, they're on the wrong version, which really would kind of suck, you know? So that, I think that was my underlying concern about it before. So I guess the real question would be, if we do a survey and we want to update the KEP, can we reasonably require those changes in the next release? And I would say probably not. We can't, right?
No, I think we have to do like a dry run and then
right.
actually implement.
Right.
So we're looking at 1.26 maybe.
Yeah. So, but the linter could lint on what we have now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like this could be version 0, which seems fair, right? Like this version hasn't had any changes for about 6 months or so. Pretty much everybody should be up to this version. And even if we come up with a new KEP template, you still have to be on this version. And then when we roll out whatever changes we get from the survey, that can be version 1 or whatever. And then we can kind of decide what we have to do with the linter and by what date people would have to be updated to that new template. So it might be good to treat this as version 0, like the stable base. Like you got to have this with the linter.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. But yeah, I also just for the template changes, the one thing that I wanted to be mindful of was not changing the template all the time, and like only changing it like I mean, it's lame, but like once a year or something, where then we can really ensure with the linter and the future versioning and everything else that people are well aware of the changes that there are, but they were not making like a lot of micro changes to a template that people just don't pick up on. Like, so that was something that I was kind of concerned about. But yeah, I think the PR should be fine. We're at version 0. It's been stable, and we can, maybe that's one of the things after we send the survey out would be to, I'm just gonna write a note. To do like post survey would be to like figure out when to roll out new template changes and how. Versioning. Yep. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I think that'll be interesting, like get a good opportunity to finally like version the KEP and then try to like articulate that to the community in a meaningful, easy way that's just not going to cause anybody any stress. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
I think I'm good too.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't write your name. Cool. Okay. Well, that's that. So yeah, I'll send you the links to the idea stuff, and I'll also send that to the other enhancements leads. And like you can either ask specific questions or like just brain dump like anything, and then we can kind of just iterate to get it down to like a nice format. I just want to see if anybody has like a specific area that they're like, oh, I know people might want to know XYZ. And then we can like iterate on the questions and try to get it out maybe in the next month or so.
Do you know who these survey experts are, or should I ask Contribex?
Yeah, it's Contribex. I think I can ask. I think Josh Burkus might know, so I was gonna ask him first.
Okay.
If he knows anybody, or if he's the person to try to kind of get our survey into shape and can help us figure out how to actually make the survey. So yeah, since it's just us and we're done.
All right.
We're done. Thanks, Ray. I'm gonna stop recording for a second. How do I do that?